Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. We're diving straight into a really fascinating topic, the teachings and writings of the Guide Xufeng, the founder of Life Qianyuan, or to honor the original phrasing from our source, 源自生命前院创始人雪峰的教诲与著作. Today, we're unpacking a massive, core theological concept from his texts, and it's this: the idea that a greatest creator is constantly, always watching every single human being. Now, I know that sounds intense, maybe even a little daunting at first, but what we're going to see as we look at the source material is that Xufeng doesn't frame this divine surveillance as a threat. Instead, he presents it as a practical tool for finding ultimate psychological peace. Let's get right into it.
So the text actually kicks things off by looking back in time. It brings up this really powerful warning from ancient Chinese sages. There are divinities watching over us. Xufeng points to this ancient proverb as the literal spark for his own modern revelation when he became the guide of Life Qianyuan. It's a great starting point, right? Because it takes this huge, abstract theological idea and grounds it in a cultural wisdom that's been around for thousands of years. But, acknowledging an ancient proverb is one thing. Actually figuring out how it works in the real world, well, that's a whole different story.
And that brings us to the main conflict the text tackles right out of the gate. See, when we rely purely on our material thinking, our basic human senses like sight, hearing, smelling, and just our everyday logic, we kind of hit a brick wall. We literally cannot comprehend the logistics of one single creator watching billions of people all at once. It just doesn't compute. And the text is super open about this skepticism. It asks the exact same questions we would. Can the greatest creator see us all? Can they really manage all that? But to bridge this gap between our physical limits and spiritual reality, Xufeng doesn't resort to magic to explain it. He actually points straight to the physical world around us. Moving into Section 1, Real-World Analogies, Grounding the Abstract. Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where the text gets super relatable. Instead of leaving this idea of an all-seeing creator up in the clouds, Xufeng grounds it completely in our everyday lives. He fires off these analogies to prove that constant observation is already everywhere. First, think about modern surveillance. CCTV cameras in banks, bus stations, traffic lights. They're always quietly recording, right? If someone does something wrong, the tape proves it. Then he scales it down to nature. A farmer knows exactly which chicken lays the most eggs and which pig is the fattest, just by watching them every single day. He also uses the example of a teacher who inherently knows exactly how every student in their class is doing. Or parents with 10 kids. They usually know exactly what's up with each child because, well, they're always watching them. So the scale might be different, but the basic principle of total awareness through constant observation, it's exactly the same. Let's look at Section 2, Guiding the Celestials, Xufeng's role. Now that the text has established that observation is just a normal part of life, it zooms in on Xufeng's specific role. As the guide, he claims to have a similar kind of awareness over his followers, who the text refers to as Qianyuan celestials. The source explicitly says that Xufeng watches, hears, and knows the thoughts of every single celestial, no matter where they are or what they're doing. And honestly, that prompts a massive, really obvious question, which the text itself asks directly. How can I do this? I mean, how can one spiritual guide possibly monitor the actions, words, and even the thoughts of an entire community all at once? You'd probably expect the answer to involve some kind of supernatural power, right? But actually, the answer is surprisingly grounded and pragmatic. Xufeng flat out says it is not by using mystical Dharma eyes or Buddha eyes. Nope. It is simply by paying incredibly close attention to what people say and do. The whole philosophy here is that every single word you speak and every action you take eventually reveals exactly what's going on inside you. And here's the really fascinating part. He adds that if someone intentionally stays totally silent and does nothing to try and hide, that deliberate silence actually exposes their inner state even more thoroughly. So it's not magic, it's practically psychological profiling based entirely on observable behavior. Now on to Section 3. Mapping spiritual destinations. So what does this all mean? Why bother monitoring all these words and actions? Well, according to Xufeng, it's to accurately map out everyone's spiritual destination. The text lays out this really clear hierarchy for the afterlife, based totally on the merits and demerits collected through this constant observation. It's essentially a giant spiritual sorting system. People who show high cultivation and merit, they're guided to heavenly realms, places the text names the 1,000-year world, the 10,000 world, and the ultimate Elysium Celestial Islands continent. Those who are just kind of stagnant in their cultivation, they have to continue the cycle of reincarnation. And those with poor behavior, unfortunately, fall into hell. Crucially, Shufeng says he uses all this observed data to adjust his guidance. He explicitly notes that if he sees certain followers simply cannot reach heaven no matter what they do, he will actually abandon his guidance and actively let them fall off his, quote, radar screen.
Which brings us to section 4, the 2 great benefits. Okay, so we've got the big theological picture of the creator watching and the localized framework of the guide watching, but how does this actually play out in a follower's everyday life? This is where we hit the psychological core of the text. Shufeng argues that if you truly internalize the fact that you're always being watched, it comes with 2 massive practical benefits for you. Step 1, you would never dare to speak carelessly or act out, especially when you think you're completely alone. Believing you are always watched essentially forces strict moral alignment because you know that even your hidden mistakes will have consequences. And then, step 2 is the psychological reward for step 1. Once you commit to only doing the right things, all your worry just vanishes. You literally don't have to stress over the outcomes of your choices because you know the creator is watching and will inevitably reward your correct behavior. And this part brilliantly shows how Life Chanyuan blends different ideas together. To really hammer home this concept of living without worry, the text borrows straight from biblical teachings, quoting Christ Jesus. Do not worry about what you will eat, drink, or wear tomorrow. First ask for the kingdom of the greatest creator. So Shufeng peeps this really familiar teaching and uses it to back up his point. If you align your actions with what's right, fully believing you're being observed, the universe, or the creator, is absolutely going to take care of your material needs and your future rewards.
And finally, section 5, a fearless life.
This all funnels down into the absolute, ultimate psychological goal of this whole philosophical framework. It's not just about getting people to comply with rules. It's about fundamentally altering how a person experiences existence. The text promises that if you navigate every single moment, especially the solitary ones, as if the greatest creator's right there observing you, your life completely transforms. It just becomes smoother. You actively pull yourself further away from hell and closer to heaven. But the absolute biggest promise here is this immense psychological relief. We're talking a complete loss of worries, anxieties, and fears. Basically, by outsourcing the ultimate judgment of your life to an all-seeing creator, that crushing, heavy burden of everyday existential anxiety is just completely lifted off your shoulders. Which leaves us with a really fascinating proposition. Shufeng doesn't just demand blind faith here. He actually frames this almost like a scientific psychological experiment. The text wraps up with this super provocative, direct challenge to the reader. It says, if you do not believe it, try it for a period of time and learn its effect. He is literally asking you to act just for a little while, as if you are under constant divine observation, just to see if that invisible pressure actually sets you completely free of anxiety. It is a wildly interesting thought experiment to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me as we unpacked the philosophy of Life Chanyushan today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.